Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast. And my name is Phil Thompson.
And I'm Steve Lacy.
And Steve is with us again today as we do another podcast, and we're still confused on the episodes. I think it's 205, 206, something like this. Does that sound good?
That sounds good.
We started doing this in like 2014.
Oh, wow.
I saw that somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, so 2014. So it's going on like 5 years.
Yeah. Previously, we were just doing live streaming sessions, right? And then recording those. So
yeah,
some of our early podcasts recorded sessions of that.
Yeah, we did live video, and now this is a combination of you can either listen to it on a podcast, the audio only, obviously, or you can catch us on iTunes. No, well, that's where you get the podcast. The audio's on iTunes. The video's on YouTube under the streamingchurch.tv channel. And then if you want the best of both worlds, just go to our main website, streamingchurch.tv, and it's in a tab that's like, what is it, resources? What do we have?
Down at the bottom.
We don't know. No, it's at the top.
Oh, it is? Well, it's at the bottom too, I think.
All right, maybe all the way there.
Podcast episodes.
Yeah, so but at the top, there's a menu that says resources, and you'll see
a listing,
our Media Vault, which has the audio version as well as the video version.
Oh, okay.
Why anybody would want to look at us, I don't know. But hey, if you want to, that's fine. So anyhow, now that we've chased off all 6 of our listeners, what are we going to talk about today?
I don't know. You wrote it down. What are we talking about today?
Are you there? Did you freeze up?
I am still here.
Oh, okay. Let me answer my own question. We're going to talk today about the top 7, count them, 7 reasons you are not reaching the unchurched. Or maybe you're doing some of it, but maybe a couple of these might help you do more.
Yeah, or avoiding these things will probably help you do better, right? So these are 7 things. These are 7
things not to do.
Yeah, 7 things not to do.
This podcast is going really well today.
Or 7 things that a lot of people are doing, and that's the reason they're not reaching the unchurched.
All right. It's confusing even to me. So let's see if we can make it even worse. You see, this is reason enough to listen, folks, we'll see how we can turn this mess around. Actually, there's some good content in here. So, because I wrote it. So let's talk about 7 reasons you're not reaching the unchurched. And, maybe some of these will spark something if you're a volunteer, a key volunteer, an elder, a leader, a pastor. Our intention is to help your church reach people. That's why we do streaming video. We use technology. We try to make that available. That's one of our deals is streaming video and mobile apps and all that. So we want to help your church grow and reach people and connect with people. So hopefully this will add to what you're doing.
All right. So, and this is a common goal of, I think, all churches to reach the unchurched, but we're struggling at that, right? We're getting a lot of...
I was just reading a stat that there's like several thousand churches a year that close in the United States. And now there are new churches popping up, but at this point, the number, and we can get into that next week, the number of churches closing is higher than the number of churches opening, which may not be a bad thing. I don't know, but we'll get to that later. But yeah. All right. So we've just killed 5 minutes here. So let's just jump into it. Here's my first point. Are you, as a church and as leadership in your church, willing to change how you do church if you want to reach the unchurched? And the reason that most churches aren't reaching the unchurched is they're not willing to change how they do church. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's the outline of this whole thing, right?
Exactly.
That's not point 1, but that's the parenthetical.
Exactly, yeah.
All right.
So we say we want to reach people, and yet most of the groups out there aren't growing a lot because, or if they are growing, they've got transfer growth being, somebody from another church is now part of your church. I mean, I saw this in the 1980s a lot. Whoever had the hottest worship team, the hottest band, that was one reason you would get transfer growth. And I remember I was leading this band, helping to lead the band. Your friend Ken Ballinger was a part of that. and my friend too, and we had a pretty good band, and we had lots of people coming from other churches because they liked the music we were doing.
Oh, I didn't know that. So you were
Yeah.
You were part of this transfer growth phenomenon.
I was part of that. We were excited about it until I thought one day, you know what? We're reaching people, but we're reaching people from other churches.
Yeah, which is not what you're.
Not really what I would want to do, but you know,
All right.
we didn't think about that. So
the first thing, number one on our list, right?
number one, yeah.
There is intention but no strategy.
So there's intention to do this, but there's really no strategy. Hey, we want to reach the unchurched. Let's pray and reach more people. And that prayer is obviously very important, but there needs to be some kind of a plan, some kind of a strategy. You know, it's that old saying, you know, you keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. That's one definition of insanity, right? I mean, so you got to change what you're doing. So wanting people to attend and really, you know, trying to reach the unchurched, it's two different things. If you haven't made some kind of changes in how you do your church, you're probably not going to get different results.
Agreed. I agree.
This is really an awkward podcast today, but that's all right. We've had some good ones, so maybe we'll pull this one out of the fire.
We're gonna pick up the pace and figure this one out. So all right. So there's intention, but no strategy. So
so I mean, you're an engineer. That makes sense, right? I mean, you've got to have some kind of a plan.
I am the action guy. So yes.
And it has to be a strategy more than just, well, let's advertise. And we can get into that a little bit, but yeah, okay, you want to advertise, but if you don't have changes with how you're doing things, you may get some people, but they're not going to stick around, and we'll get that in a bit.
Yeah, so we're kind of getting in the next point here, where the other thing that the trap they fall into is trying to please everyone.
Yeah, and that's, you know, it's hard, because especially if you're making changes, because you have a group of people that have been with you probably for a long time. And, you know, they're happy maybe, but then you're starting to change things. And you start to change things because you're trying to reach people that are unchurched, change the way you do church. And we'll get into that in a second, some of what you're actually changing. But you've made some changes, and then all of a sudden, the people that have been for a while, well, we don't like that. You're doing different music. Why are you doing different music? We don't like that. So then you're trying to do some of your old stuff with your new stuff, or maybe even how you do your services. You know, you're doing them differently. And so like, well, you know, why are you doing this? Why are you changing this? You know, I've actually seen this in my own church not too long ago, you know, change how we do things. And it upsets people because people don't like change. Right.
And so it makes it tough to attract the unchurched if you're unwilling to make those changes, and you may kind of dabble and do kind of a halfway job. You say, well, we got to retain the people we have, but we want to reach reach these new people.
Right.
And so what happens is you end up alienating everybody.
Yep.
Right. You're going to go for that middle ground. You say, we'll keep these guys somewhat happy and keep these other guys somewhat happy. And so then everyone is somewhat happy.
Yeah, but that doesn't work that way, because the unhappy people remain unhappy usually. And unless, of course, they really catch the vision for what you're doing. But and then, you know, the people that you're trying to attract, it's not enough to keep them, you know, because you're still doing stuff that they can't relate to.
All right. Exactly. All right. Moving on here. Number 3 on our list of things that are happening that prevent you from reaching the unchurched. So number 3 is members don't know unchurched people. I'm not sure I believe this one. Do you believe this one?
I wrote it down. I think when I say they don't know unchurched people, they may know some people at work, but they don't really have a relationship with them. And so they, you know, in some groups, you know, it's like you don't want to get to know people that aren't Christians, because, oh my God, they might corrupt you. You know, they might be a bad influence on your family. Hey, I've seen that happen, you know. And so when I say they don't know the unchurched, they may know people that they work with, or they may see their neighbor when they get the mail, but they don't have any kind of a relationship with those people. And I'm advocating that you do get relationship with these people, that you do step out and you get out of your comfort zone and you begin to do things with them. If you've got families down the street that have kids and you have kids, hey, do a picnic together or do some social thing together. Connect with them outside of the church walls. If you can connect with them to some degree, I'm not saying you have to be their best friends, but if you can connect with them to some degree, either at work or school, whatever, then it opens up the door to invite people to your church.
Right. So it's just a matter of reaching out to and forming relationships with those around you. So, I mean, some people do a really good job at this. There's one of my good friends he moves into a new neighborhood, they happen to move, and he knows inside of 2 weeks more people than I've known for 20 years living in the same place.
Yeah. So, well, you're an introvert and I am too, but you kind of have to step out of your comfort zone. And there's ways you could do that. You can even use technology to do this. I mean, as a church, you can use technology to stream your services, update your websites. And again, if you are having some kind of a relationship, if your members have some type of a relationship with them other than just waving, when they get the mail or something, you can always say, hey, check out the church online that I go to. It's online. We're streaming. If you're not streaming, at least, have an up-to-date website that's got some pictures of your church. I mean, when I say church, the people in your church and the things that you're doing. Again, this will help connect the unchurched.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. As we move along here, I'm noticing in your notes, I'm like, wow, you said we had 7, and I see you skipped number 4 here.
I think I deleted it, so we're back to 6.
Okay, we're back.
This train continues to go off the rail. All right. I think I deleted something. I didn't like it, so I deleted it. It's always good to pre-read your notes.
I did.
This 2 or 3 weeks ago. Well, you did, but I didn't. I wrote it a few weeks ago, and I'm like,
I did read the notes, but until we're going through it, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, we skipped number 4.
Yeah, so we're going on to number 5 here.
Number 5. There's no number 4. So if you're keeping track at home, folks, there is no number 4. It's number 5, number 3, and then number 5. That's
all right. We'll get to 7 either way.
Some way. Okay.
Yes. So the number 5 is that church language is different.
The church language is different. Kind of what we're doing here today in this podcast. It's very confusing. So, I mean, we talked about this a lot. The Christianese, the inside stuff, the inside terminology we use, the inside jokes, the inside. Whenever I'm speaking, and usually whenever the main guy is speaking, if we do an inside thing, we try to take a moment to explain it to people who are new. Because there's nothing worse than, you've been in social settings. You're with some people and they start talking about something you have no idea about because you weren't privy to the conversation before or whatever, and it's just plain rude.
Right.
I still have a very good friend who is from Peru. In fact, him and I became good friends in the early 1980s, and he is American, but he's also Peruvian, has dual citizenship. And he would, when I was doing missions, he was with me and he interpreted for me when I was speaking in Mexico, when I would be speaking. And that's kind of how now he's an interpreter. He works for the courts and does his own business and stuff. But one of the things I had the problem with him was early on in our relationship was, we'd get together and do things, and he'd have friends that would come, watch a game or play pool or do something, and his friends were they would speak Spanish because they were old friends of his. So they would be speaking Spanish, and I would be sitting here, just looking around going, I would catch a word or two, but I don't speak Spanish. So, and it was just incredibly rude to do that because they're speaking a language I have no idea about. And it makes it, I don't know, I don't think they were trying to do it on purpose. They were just used to speaking Spanish together. And here's this guy that is, not bilingual, just English only guy. And I felt left out. And that's the way people feel I know it's an extreme example, but that's the way people feel when they come to your church and you're using code words or using things that everybody in the church knows because they've been there for years, but the new person doesn't.
Right. And I think a lot of churches are guilty of that.
I think it's very easy
And
to fall into that.
right. And it may not it may not be coming from the pulpit, but it may be just members within the church been part of it. So
I think it
I
comes from
like your
both. Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I like your quote here. He says, "Talk like normal people talk." He says, "Be clear. Remember, being unclear does not make you deep. It just makes you unclear."
Well, yeah, and I had a good friend who he was into the deep things of God, and he's a great guy, and he was when he would teach, he's just always this deep things of God, and I mean I'm all for deep things of God, but you got to start somewhere, and you have to. What good is it trying to go to the deep things if nobody understands what you're saying? You know, I mean, how does that make you any deeper, any more spiritual? You know, so.
All right. So number 6 on our list here.
Number 6, yeah.
Unchurched are different.
Yeah, so, as you know, Steve, I spent several years with a very successful church here in town. We helped with the music and was helped in starting it about 25, 26 years ago. And, I learned a lot from David McAllister. And the unchurched are different. They're gonna look different. They're going to dress differently, probably. They're going to come and they're going to be couples that are living together that aren't married. Some of them have some life controlling problems too, addictions, family breakups, dysfunctional. I mean, some of this stuff you see with Christians as well. I'm not saying it's just, unchurched people, but there's different ideas. And I think a lot of this is true. I remember, if I'm rambling on here, stop me, but I can remember when I first moved out here, there was a bunch of hippies living out south of town. There was a little place called Valencia Ranch. It's off of Valencia. In fact, most people, obviously, if you're listening to this, there's a casino down there on the property now. I think it's Casino del Sol off of Valencia. We see the advertisements on TV all the time. But years before that, there was this old ranch that was one of the oldest ranches in southern Arizona, and we called it Valencia Ranch. And there was a bunch of hippies that moved into this ranch. And somehow or another, they connected with the church I was with. This is the late 70s. And so I would go out there and lead Bible studies. I'm all of 20 years old, 21 years old. And I'm trying to lead a Bible study, and I'm getting hit with all these different ideas about God. Really different ideas. Some of it was Buddhism, some of it was East Indian thought, Hinduism, a lot of things. And so it was challenging. It was very challenging for me. And yet at the same time, I realized, hey, these people are different. They're not Christians. And they're definitely, a couple of them became Christians, and actually several of them became Christians later. But, they had different ideas on things. And so instead of just shutting them off and judging them because of their lifestyle or because of their belief system, I didn't have much of a choice. I just let them talk a little bit, and then we would talk. Sometimes we debate theology, but it was usually a very good, healthy conversation. And all I'm saying is when I say the unchurched are different, is you got to expect, if you really are going to reach the unchurched and they start coming, there's going to be lots of different things that you're going to be exposed to. And look, I know people aren't naive out here listening to this podcast. I know you're not naive, but just be ready that, hey, they're going to come with different ideas. And instead of shutting them down, give them a little bit of freedom to express their thoughts.
All right. And number 7 on our list of 6.
You're not really saying much in this podcast, other than pointing out all our mistakes. No, but you got what I was saying about the unchurched, right?
Right. Yeah. I completely agree with it. So yeah, I think just like you, I was just resonate. I wasn't able to add more to it. It's just like sex isn't just for married people.
That's right.
There's a bunch of the culture it's changing, is coming up with their own ideas of things, and so they're going to be different. So I resonate with what you're saying. I guess I couldn't add any more.
Okay, well,
So
good.
Moving on here to number 7.
Moving on. Let's get this over with. Oh, look, Google just said something here. I've got Google. What is it called? Google Assistant? Anyhow. All right. So number 7 is no next steps. So again, we're talking about why many churches are unsuccessful in reaching the unchurched. That's what we're talking about today. At least we hope that's coming across. And so one of the things that I have found very clearly in a lot of churches is there's no environment really designed with new people in mind. So if people do come and start coming, they need, in order to keep them coming, they've got to connect. They've got to make friends. They've got to grow in their faith. There's things that they've got to do so that they can go deeper. There's the word deeper again, but go deeper in the church and deeper in relationships. So if you don't have any next steps, so, there's lots of different ideas on this. I like a lot of, quite frankly, what Rick Warren did years ago with his Class 101, 201. Some people don't like that, but you can still take the ideas behind it and move forward. It's at least maybe call it something different, but progress in helping people move along.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was thinking about that as well. So it's just an organized structure from let's go, everybody that is brand new, let's go to step 1 or class 1, and then there's class 2, and then there's just a natural next steps progression.
It can be a progression, and I think, whatever you want to call it. I mean, we have something called at our church called Meet Yourself, and it's just new people come and you can meet people within our own church, our leadership team, and then meet some of the newer people and regular attenders. It's a special thing we do 3 or 4 times a year. We talk about our history, where we've come from, where we're going, that kind of thing. And I think that's, you can call it a membership class if you want, but even if you don't do membership, at least you're helping people, and if you're evangelical, what does it mean to serve God? What does it mean to have a relationship with Jesus, and what does it mean to be saved? Those kind of things are entry levels. And then the next one could be the next class, or the next time you have something could be about, what does it mean to grow spiritually? How can you become a disciple? How can you walk in the ways of Jesus? And that's one. A third one would be discovering your talents and your gifts. One of the best ways to get people connected is to help them find a place where they can serve, something that lines up with their gifts and their talents. So, they're comfortable, they like doing it, and it helps them grow, but it also helps other people. So there can be a third step that's about your gifts, your spiritual gifts, and serving. And then the fourth one can be, reaching out again, and how to find your mission, or how to connect with people you work with or go to school with. If you don't have that kind of a process or something similar, I think that's where we miss the boat. And so we may get new people coming, but if they don't make friends and they don't connect in some way, in some fashion, they usually go away.
Right. Yep. So you just described as you're describing these steps, it was the 101, 201, 301, or first base, second base, third base, and
the old baseball diamond that Rick Warren used to use. Yeah. And people have done variations of that, circles and everything else. But community groups, small groups, we call them community groups. Your church calls them, is it life groups?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Just trying to think here.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, I coined that. I coined it life groups. That's one thing they didn't pull apart when I left. But whatever you call it, life groups, cell groups, community groups, small groups, that's another way that you can help people connect. They come, they make friends, and the relationship happens, and good things happen. And so when we don't do a lot of these things, and some of you, I know there's people listening to this podcast, and some of this stuff you do, but there may be a few here that you might want to incorporate and maybe stop doing, like trying to please everybody, or speaking a different language, so to speak, in your church. Those kind of things, I think, can really help your church reach people. And I think combined with using technology, meeting people where they're at in social media as well as real life. Well, social media is real life, but you know what I'm saying.
Ooh, there's a quote. There's a tweet for this, huh?
I should write a book, right? So we don't want to go there again,
social
do we?
media is real life.
Well, it is. It is real life. It's just, All right. So I'm done. Do you have anything to add to this?
No, this is great.
Okay. We'd love to hear from you folks. And some of this stuff might be a little controversial. We'd love to get your feedback, regardless on how you feel about it. You can send us an email, support@streamingchurch.tv. And the reason we talk about some of these things besides always tech, and we do talk about tech. We talked about audio last week. We've talked about streaming video. We've talked about software you can use to organize your church, but we talk about some of these other things because we really do care and we want to help your community, your church, reach people and grow and become a healthy, vibrant body of Christ. That's why we do this.
That is true. We're here to serve it's, as I say with a lot of people that I interface with, it's our ministry to help your ministry. So not only with the tech and anything we have to offer.
It is.
Since we are as old as the hills and been around forever, we're sharing our wisdom, huh?
I was talking to somebody yesterday and they said, "How long have you been doing public speaking?" I said, "Well, I started to speak in the late 70s. Of course, I was in radio about that same time as well. But I can't believe it's been over 40 years.
Wow.
That's amazing. I think that it's amazing I'm still alive, but then also it's amazing that, to do that. So, and between you and I, and then other people on our team, we've done a lot of stuff over the years. And so I think we have something to share with people. And you may not always agree with everything, and that's okay. You don't have to. But I like the fact that we can share things with people based on our own experiences, and hopefully that will help somebody. All right, so we're done.
All right, sounds great.
Good enough. All right, he's Steve Lacy. I'm Phil Thompson. Again, we appreciate your feedback. And again, we appreciate just spending some time with us today on the Church Solutions Podcast. My name is Phil Thompson, and you have yourself a great day. Thanks for listening. We will catch you again on another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast.